Dubai, 2016. The night air was thick with sirens and flashing blue lights outside a luxury apartment tower in downtown Dubai. Curious onlookers gathered along the street as police sealed off the marble-lined entrance, whispering about what might have happened inside one of the city's most expensive homes. On the 15th floor, a man's lifeless body lay sprawled across the living room floor. Dr. Omar al-Rashid, one of Dubai's most respected cardiologists. Blood glistened under the chandelier's cold light. Beside him, his wife Layla sat trembling, her hands streaked with red, whispering his name over and over. In the corner of the room, a nurse's handbag and scattered hospital papers hinted that someone else had been there, someone who was now gone. Neighbors said they had heard shouting, then a crash, then silence. When police arrived, the door was unlocked. Inside, the scene told a story no one yet understood, a story of love, betrayal, and rage that had ended in death. In a city where perfection is everything, one midnight confrontation revealed the cracks beneath the luxury, where passion, pride, and secrecy collided. Within hours, the headlines spread through Dubai's hospitals and high-rises. A doctor dead, his wife in custody, a Filipina nurse missing. What began as harmless late-night messages between a doctor and his nurse would soon unravel into one of Dubai's most haunting true crime stories. A love triangle that no one saw coming, and a tragedy that the city would never forget. To the outside world, Dr. Omar al-Rashid was the perfect man. A celebrated cardiologist at one of Dubai's most prestigious hospitals, he was known for his calm confidence, immaculate appearance, and effortless charm. Patients trusted him, colleagues admired him, and society respected him. Born into privilege, Omar came from an influential Emirati family with deep business and political ties. From a young age, success was not an option, it was an expectation. He graduated from a top London medical school, returned to Dubai to build a glittering career, and married a woman who matched his family's status. On paper, his life was flawless. But beneath the spotless surface lived a man consumed by restlessness. Omar had everything: wealth, status, admiration, yet he craved something he couldn't define. His marriage, though outwardly peaceful, was hollow. Layla was poised, loving, and devoted, but Omar wanted excitement, something forbidden, something that made him feel alive. At the hospital, he found it. Behind the sterile walls and clinical routines, Omar discovered a kind of attention that stroked his ego. Patients adored him, but it was the nurses' admiration that lingered. Among them was Angela Cruz, a Filipina nurse whose quiet sincerity cut through his practiced charm. She didn't treat him like a celebrity. She treated him like a human being. And for a man who lived his entire life behind a mask, that felt intoxicating. Omar's flaw was arrogance, the belief that his charm could fix anything, that his power made him untouchable. He thought he could control every part of his double life. But control is an illusion, and his would soon shatter in blood and consequence. Angela Cruz arrived in Dubai in 2013 with hope in her eyes and determination in her heart. A trained nurse from the Philippines, she carried the weight of her family's dreams. Her mother was ill, her siblings depended on her. Every dirham she earned was sent home to keep their small world afloat. Angela worked tirelessly at Al Zahra Medical Center, earning the respect of patients and peers alike. She had a gentle nature, the kind that made people confide in her. She listened without judgment, smiled through exhaustion, and treated every patient as though they were family. But behind her kind smile was loneliness. Like many expatriates, Angela lived far from home, her world reduced to work, shared accommodation, and late-night phone calls to her family. Her life was quiet, repetitive, and isolated until Dr. Omar entered it. Their connection started innocently, quick conversations between shifts, polite exchanges about patients. But soon the messages began, first hospital updates, then jokes, then something deeper. Omar made her feel seen, valued, special. He spoke to her with warmth and attention she hadn't felt in years. For Angela, it was not about money or status, it was affection, human connection. She told herself it wasn't wrong, that he was kind, that maybe love could exist even in impossible places. But as their relationship deepened, Angela found herself trapped between emotion and fear. She knew the rules, such relationships were taboo, even dangerous in Dubai's strict social order. Yet every time she thought of walking away, Omar's voice pulled her back. Her fatal flaw was trust, trusting a man who could never truly be hers, and believing love could survive the boundaries of class, culture, and consequence. In Omar's arms, Angela felt freedom, but in his world, that freedom would soon cost her everything. If Dr. Omar was the city's golden man, Layla al-Rashid was his perfect reflection, elegant, intelligent, and composed. The daughter of a diplomat, Layla had been raised in privilege, educated abroad, and taught to value grace over emotion. She knew how to host dinner parties, maintain appearances, and smile through discomfort. Her marriage to Omar was not just a union of love, it was an alliance of prestige. For years, Layla believed in their partnership. They had a beautiful home, social respect, and what seemed to be a strong foundation. But the man she thought she knew began to drift away. Late-night calls, weekend conferences, sudden coldness, the signs were there, but denial was easier than confrontation. Layla's friends told her she was lucky, that all marriages had secrets, that men like Omar always strayed but came back. She wanted to believe that, until she saw the messages. The discovery was like a blade. The WhatsApp conversations, the photos, the words, "I miss you" from another woman, all burned into her mind. Layla felt humiliation far more than heartbreak. She had not only been betrayed, she had been made a fool. But she did not scream, she did not cry, she smiled. She played her role, and quietly she began to plan. Layla's flaw was pride, the kind that transforms pain into vengeance. To her, reputation was sacred. And when that reputation was stained, she decided to reclaim her dignity not with tears, but with control. The woman who had been silent for years was finally ready to speak, not with words, but with action. And that decision would set in motion the night that ended in blood. The first time Dr. Omar al-Rashid spoke to Nurse Angela Cruz beyond a routine hospital exchange, it was over a patient who needed urgent care. The moment was ordinary, a conversation in the hallway, a shared glance of exhaustion, yet something lingered. Omar noticed her calm under pressure, the kindness in her tone. For Angela, it was his voice, steady, composed, and unexpectedly gentle. Days turned into weeks, and their paths crossed more often. Late-night shifts in the fluorescent glow of the hospital corridors blurred boundaries. They began to share small talk between rounds, stories of family, food, and sleepless nights. It felt harmless, human, but what began as conversation soon became connection. Omar started messaging Angela after hours, first about patient files, then about her day, then about nothing in particular. "You make the ward feel less cold," he once wrote. Angela laughed, flattered, unaware of the line already crossed. The messages grew longer, warmer, personal. He told her about his unhappy marriage, how Layla had become distant, cold, absorbed in status and appearances. It was a half-truth he repeated until even he believed it. To Angela, those words unlocked sympathy, and from sympathy, affection bloomed. When he invited her to coffee one evening, she hesitated, then said yes. In the quiet corner of a cafe near the hospital, Omar listened intently, asked about her family in the Philippines, her dreams, her fears. No one had ever listened to her like that. By the end of that meeting, Angela's heart had surrendered. Their secret world began to expand. Lunch breaks became rendezvous. Weekends turned into drives along Jumeirah Beach, stolen moments behind tinted car windows. They spoke in code, laughed like old friends, and deleted every message that could expose them. For Omar, it was escape, a refuge from the expectations of his name, his marriage, his status. For Angela, it was love, pure, terrifying, all-consuming. She began to wait for his messages like oxygen. Every vibration of her phone meant something. Every silence felt like loss. He promised her a future he could never give, saying, "Maybe one day we'll start again somewhere no one knows us." But behind every secret affair lies the ticking of a clock. The more they tried to hide, the more the truth began to show. Omar's absences grew frequent, his lies bolder. Angela's colleagues began to notice her sudden late-night calls, her distracted stares, and Layla, his wife, began to sense the distance. What neither of them realized was that the affair that made them feel alive was slowly setting the stage for a night that would destroy them both. For years, Layla al-Rashid believed she understood her husband completely. Dr. Omar al-Rashid was charming, composed, and disciplined, a man who thrived on control. Their marriage wasn't fiery, but it was stable, predictable, safe. Or so she thought. It began with small things, changes so subtle that most people wouldn't have noticed. Omar started carrying his phone everywhere, even to the bathroom. He began spending longer hours at the hospital, returning home past midnight with the faint scent of a perfume that wasn't hers. When Layla asked, he smiled. "Emergency surgeries," he said. "Patients don't choose the time." His answers were calm, too calm, and that calm made her uneasy. She told herself she was imagining things, that her mind was inventing suspicion. But intuition is louder than reason. It whispers in the spaces between words, in the silence after a lie. Then came the moment that changed everything. One night around 2 a.m., Omar fell asleep on the living room couch after a long day. His phone buzzed on the coffee table once, twice, 3 times. Layla froze. The name flashing on the screen was saved as LC, initials she didn't recognize. The message preview read, "I can't sleep without you. Miss you, love." Her hands trembled as she picked up the phone. The device wasn't locked, a mistake he would never make again. Inside was an entire world she didn't know existed. Dozens of messages, voice notes, emojis. The tone of every conversation burned through her like acid, flirtatious jokes, midnight confessions, the kind of intimacy reserved for lovers. One voice note played softly through the speaker, a woman's gentle voice with a Filipino accent. "You looked so tired today, Doc. Please eat before you sleep, okay? I love you." Layla stared at the screen until her vision blurred. The evidence was undeniable, the betrayal complete. But she didn't scream, she didn't cry, she didn't wake him. Instead, she took his phone to the dining table, opened her own, and began forwarding every message, every photo, every voice note to herself. She printed screenshots, filed them in a folder, labeled them neatly. Proof. Because Layla al-Rashid didn't believe in confrontation. She believed in control. Over the next few days, she said nothing. She played her part, the elegant wife, the polite hostess, the supportive partner. She smiled when Omar spoke, even laughed at his jokes. But inside her, something had snapped. Every glance she gave him carried a quiet storm. Every polite nod was a mask for the rage building inside her chest. Omar noticed her distance but dismissed it as fatigue. His arrogance blinded him to the shifting air around him, the cold, the silence, the stare that lasted a second too long. Layla began studying him, his patterns, his lies, the way he hesitated before answering questions. She noticed the subtle guilt in his voice when he mentioned extra shifts, the flicker in his eyes when his phone buzzed. She knew exactly who the woman was before he ever said her name. A Filipina nurse. Young, pretty, innocent-looking, someone who called him Doc with affection. Layla didn't hate her. Not yet. What she hated was the humiliation. The thought that people might be whispering behind her back, that she'd become a story in someone else's gossip. When she discovered the truth, she didn't explode, she began to plot. From that night onward, Layla's silence was not forgiveness. It was strategy. She would not confront him in anger, she would wait until he had nowhere left to run. Because when love turns to humiliation, rage doesn't burn loud, it burns cold. And Layla's silence was colder than anything Omar had ever known. Layla al-Rashid had spent 3 nights staring at her husband's phone. Each message cut deeper than the last, endearments, midnight calls, whispered I love yous. What hurt most wasn't the affair itself, it was the tenderness. Omar spoke to Angela Cruz with a warmth Layla hadn't heard in years. Every take care, my love, felt like a slap. But now Layla wasn't just hurt. She was calm, dangerously calm. She didn't want an argument. She wanted truth stripped bare. At 11:47 p.m., while Omar showered, Layla picked up his phone and opened WhatsApp. Angela's name was right there, heart emoji beside it. She took a breath, her fingers steady, and began typing. Omar, Layla typing, "I miss you. Can't stop thinking about last night." The reply came instantly. Angela, me too, Doc. I wish we could be together like that every night. I love you. Layla's hand trembled slightly, but she kept typing. Omar, Layla, do you ever think about our future? Angela, every day. I'll wait as long as it takes. You said you'd leave her. Silence. Layla stared at the words until they blurred. It wasn't a fling. It was love, real, raw, unforgivable. She put the phone down, eyes burning, and whispered to herself, "So this is what you've given her." The next morning, Layla dressed carefully, soft beige abaya, gold earrings, a calm face that hid a storm. She drove to Al-Zahra Medical Center, where Omar worked. The receptionist smiled politely as Layla entered the hospital lobby, unaware she was walking into a brewing scandal. In the parking lot, she saw Angela, small frame, nurse uniform neatly pressed, walking toward the staff entrance. For a moment, Layla studied her. The woman didn't look like a villain. She looked ordinary. That made it worse. Angela, Layla called. The nurse turned, surprised. Yes. I'm Omar's wife. Angela froze. The color drained from her face. The silence that followed was unbearable. Two women, one moment, and a world of betrayal between them. Layla stepped closer. You thought he would leave me. You thought you could take my husband, my life. Angela shook her head, voice trembling. It's not like that. He told me your marriage was. Don't, Layla snapped, her tone sharp enough to cut air. Don't tell me lies he told to make you feel special. A few hospital staff stopped nearby, pretending not to watch. The tension was magnetic, electric. Angela tried to walk away, but Layla's voice followed her. Did you enjoy sending him those messages, telling him you love him while I slept beside him? Angela turned, tears filling her eyes. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I loved him. Those words echoed through the parking lot like gunfire. Layla's composure cracked for just a second, eyes glistening, breath unsteady. Then she smiled, the kind of smile that frightens more than fury. Well, she said quietly, you've succeeded. Omar appeared minutes later, alerted by a colleague. His face blanched when he saw them. Layla, he said carefully, please not here. She turned on him. Why not here, Omar? You humiliated me in secret. Let them all see the truth. Enough, he hissed, grabbing her arm. We'll talk at home. Angela stepped back, crying openly now. I'm sorry, Doc, I didn't want this. But it was too late. The damage was done. The whispers had already spread through corridors, across phones, into staff lounges. Within hours, the affair of Dr. Al-Rashid and the Filipina nurse was the hospital's open secret. By afternoon, Angela Cruz received a suspension letter pending investigation of unprofessional conduct. Her world, once filled with purpose, collapsed. Friends stopped calling. Neighbors avoided her. Her name had become poison. Meanwhile, Layla returned home in silence. The confrontation hadn't healed her. It had awakened something darker. She spent hours sitting alone in the living room, staring at framed photos of her and Omar, now meaningless. When he returned that night, she didn't yell. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She simply said, you've destroyed us, Omar, and I'm not going to let you walk away clean. In Dubai, appearances mean everything. But when masks break, the faces beneath are far more dangerous. That night, Layla stopped being the loyal wife. She became something else, a woman planning the end of her humiliation. The city glowed beneath the desert sky, glass towers reflecting moonlight, streets humming with quiet wealth. Inside one of those towers, Dr. Omar Al-Rashid poured himself a drink, staring at his own reflection in the window. He looked calm, but inside he was unraveling. It had been 2 weeks since the confrontation at the hospital. His career was trembling, his wife was distant, and his secret was out. He had called Angela Cruz earlier that day. His voice was low, almost pleading. Come tonight, he said. Just once, we need to talk to end this properly. Angela hesitated. Omar, it's over, I can't. Please, he interrupted. One last conversation, that's all. Against her better judgment, she agreed. At 9:45 p.m., Angela stood outside his apartment door, clutching her phone. Her hands trembled. When Omar opened the door, his smile was faint, tired. "Thank you for coming," he said softly. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the air conditioner. On the table sat 2 glasses of water, untouched. "I just want to end this peacefully," Angela began. "Everything's ruined, the hospital, my name." Omar nodded, eyes downcast. "I never meant to hurt you or her. I thought I could control it." She laughed bitterly. "Control, you destroyed both our lives." The conversation turned sharp. Regret mixed with anger, love with blame. Angela accused him of using her. Omar accused her of not understanding his world. Their words collided, louder with each exchange. Then came the knock. 3 sharp raps against the door, deliberate, cold. Omar froze. "Who is that?" Angela whispered. Before he could answer, the door burst open. Layla al-Rashid stood in the doorway, her abaya flowing like a shadow, her face pale but burning with fury. In her hand, she held a folder, printed messages, photos, the proof of every lie. "So," she said quietly, stepping inside, "this is where you meet her." Angela's eyes widened. "Layla, please." "Don't say my name," Layla snapped. She threw the papers into the air. They scattered like snow, covering the floor with fragments of betrayal. Omar stepped forward. "Layla, stop, you shouldn't be here." She turned on him, voice trembling. "I gave you everything, Omar, my loyalty, my pride, and you gave it to her." Angela tried to leave, but Layla blocked her path. "You think you can ruin my life and walk away." Omar grabbed Layla's wrist, trying to pull her back. "Enough," he shouted. In that moment, something broke, a vase, a scream, a blur of movement. Layla shoved him away, tears streaking her face. "You lied to me, to both of us." Angela cried out, "Stop it, please," as she reached for Omar, trying to calm him. The struggle was chaotic, arms, shouts, glass shattering against the marble floor. A sharp piece sliced through the air. Omar stepped between them, reaching for Layla, but his movement collided with her swing. A gasp, a stumble, then silence. Omar stood still, eyes wide, confusion spreading across his face. His white shirt bloomed red. He looked down, the shard of glass embedded just below his ribs. Layla froze, her breath caught in horror. "Omar." He tried to speak, but collapsed. The sound of his body hitting the floor echoed through the apartment. Angela screamed, kneeling beside him. "Call someone, Layla, call an ambulance." But Layla just stared at her hands, shaking, blood-streaked. "I didn't mean to, I didn't." Angela grabbed her phone, fingers slippery, dialing emergency services. Her voice cracked as she shouted for help. But by the time paramedics arrived, it was too late. Dr. Omar al-Rashid, respected doctor, husband, lover, was dead. Layla's scream tore through the night, raw and broken. Angela stumbled backward, eyes wide, unable to breathe. The apartment fell silent once more, shattered glass, blood on the marble, and the sound of sirens growing closer. In a city built on perfection, 3 lives collided in one irreversible moment, where love turned to rage, and betrayal ended in death. The sirens reached downtown Dubai within minutes. Neighbors, already standing in their doorways after hearing the screams, watched as police and paramedics rushed into the al-Rashid residence. The marble foyer that once gleamed with elegance was now a crime scene, blood pooled across the floor, papers scattered like snow, glass fragments glittering under the harsh light. Dr. Omar al-Rashid lay motionless. His pulse was gone before the paramedics even unzipped their kit. The room was silent except for the sobbing of his wife, Layla, who sat slumped beside him, whispering the same word over and over, "Omar, Omar." Detective Karim al-Farsi, one of Dubai's most seasoned investigators, arrived shortly after midnight. He had seen crimes of passion before, but this one was different. The setting, wealth, status, A royal address meant every step would be watched, every word carefully measured. He surveyed the scene, the broken vase, the blood trail, the phone on the floor still flashing incoming calls. On the couch sat Layla, her abaya torn, her hands trembling, eyes blank. Nearby, a nurse's handbag lay open, ID badge visible, Angela Cruz. "Where is she?" Karim asked. "Gone," one officer replied. "Neighbors saw a woman running barefoot down the corridor before security arrived." "Get the CCTV footage," he ordered. Within hours, surveillance video revealed the story in fragments. At 9:46 p.m., Angela entered the building alone. At 10:21, Layla arrived using the private elevator. She'd known exactly where to find them. By 10:43, muffled shouting could be heard on the corridor cameras. At 10:48, Angela fled, barefoot, her clothes smeared with blood. 2 minutes later, Layla stumbled out, disoriented, screaming for help. The evidence told a story of chaos. 3 people, 1 confrontation, and a moment of irreversible violence. Forensics began reconstructing the scene. The blood patterns suggested movement, struggle, impact. The broken glass matched the shard embedded in Omar's body. Fingerprints confirmed all 3 had handled the same vase, one that shattered during the argument. At the police station, Layla was incoherent, alternating between sobbing and silence. When questioned, her voice cracked. "I didn't mean to hurt him. He tried to stop me. It just happened." She insisted it was an accident. "He was lying to both of us," she said quietly. "I only wanted him to tell the truth." Angela was found the next morning at a friend's apartment in shock. Her hands were bruised, her uniform stained. When Karim sat across from her, she whispered, "I didn't kill him. I tried to help him." According to Angela's account, Layla arrived shouting, throwing papers, accusing them both. Omar stepped between them, trying to calm his wife. "They were pushing, yelling," she said. "Then there was glass everywhere. I heard him gasp. When I looked, he was bleeding." Karim listened to both women, knowing their stories overlapped, but not perfectly. The inconsistencies were small, human. Neither woman seemed capable of deliberate murder. This wasn't premeditated. It was emotion turned deadly. The forensic timeline supported that conclusion. The fatal wound was delivered from close range, not with force but in panic. There were no defensive injuries, no signs of planning. By dawn, both women were formally detained, Layla for manslaughter, Angela for aiding and failing to report the crime. The case file was labeled Domestic Incident, under review. Detective Karim stood in the empty apartment hours later, watching sunlight creep across the blood-stained floor. The smell of antiseptic had replaced the scent of perfume. He picked up one of the fallen photographs, Omar and Layla on their wedding day, smiling, radiant, untouched by time. He stared for a long moment, then set it down carefully. What began as a forbidden connection ended as tragedy, 3 lives bound by lies, undone by a single moment of truth. For Karim, the case was just another file. But for Dubai's glittering society, it was a reminder that even behind perfect walls, love can still turn fatal. The trial of Layla al-Rashid and Angela Cruz gripped Dubai like few cases ever had. A respected doctor dead, a wife accused of killing him, and a Filipina nurse tied to the affair. The story had everything the media craved: love, betrayal, and blood behind luxury walls. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed as reporters jostled for space. Inside, the air was heavy with tension. The courtroom was packed. Lawyers, journalists, curious spectators, and members of the al-Rashid family, all watching as the 2 women entered under guard. Layla appeared calm, dressed in black, her face pale but composed. Angela looked fragile, eyes red from sleepless nights, clutching a rosary in trembling hands. They did not look at each other. The prosecution opened sharply. The lead attorney painted Layla as a jealous wife driven by rage. "She discovered her husband's affair and sought revenge," he declared. "Her pride was wounded, and she chose violence over reason." He described the sequence of that fatal night, the confrontation, the chaos, the shattered glass. To the prosecution, it was no accident. She brought the confrontation to him, he said. She knew what she was doing. Angela's role, they argued, was not innocent either. Though she hadn't delivered the fatal blow, her presence had fueled the confrontation. She knew the man was married, the prosecutor said, and she chose to continue. Without her, this tragedy would never have happened. Then came the defense. Layla's lawyer rose slowly, speaking in measured tones. "My client is not a murderer," he began. "She is a wife betrayed, humiliated, and broken. What happened was not revenge, it was loss of control in the face of unbearable pain." He held up the printed screenshots, the messages, the confessions. "This was not jealousy," he said softly. "This was heartbreak." Angela's defense was simple and sincere. Through tears, she testified, "I never meant to hurt anyone. I tried to stop them. I loved him, but I didn't want this." Her voice cracked as she described watching Omar fall, the blood spreading across the floor, the horror she couldn't forget. The courtroom was silent. Even the reporters lowered their pens. Detective Karim Al-Farsi testified next, confirming what the forensics showed: no weapon brought to the scene, no signs of premeditation, only chaos. "This wasn't planned," he said. "It was an explosion of emotion." When the judges withdrew to deliberate, the tension was suffocating. Hours later, they returned. The verdict was delivered in a still room. Layla al-Rashid, convicted of manslaughter. Sentence, 15 years in prison. Angela Cruz, convicted as an accessory. Sentence, 2 years imprisonment, followed by deportation. Layla wept silently. Angela collapsed into tears. In the end, justice did not heal. It only divided what was left of 3 broken lives. Outside, cameras flashed again as the women were led away. The story was over for the world, but for those who lived it, the scars would never fade. The tragedy of Dr. Omar al-Rashid, Layla, and Angela Cruz wasn't just about love gone wrong. It was a portrait of power, silence, and the human cost of secrets in a society built on appearances. At its heart, this story explored love and power. Omar believed he could separate emotion from consequence, that his status could shield him from truth. His affection for Angela wasn't love in its purest form, it was control disguised as compassion. For Angela, love meant sacrifice. For Omar, it meant escape. That imbalance between privilege and vulnerability turned their affair into a trap neither could survive. Then there was technology and temptation. What began as harmless WhatsApp messages evolved into a digital diary of deception. Every text, every emoji, every "I miss you" created a parallel world where guilt didn't exist until it was exposed. The same phone that connected them became the evidence that destroyed them. The story also revealed the raw force of female rage. Layla's silence was her armor, a quiet endurance cultivated by cultural expectation. But silence can be dangerous. When truth shattered that mask, her pain became volcanic. The woman who once embodied composure turned into someone she no longer recognized. Her breakdown was not madness. It was the eruption of years of pride, betrayal, and repression. Cultural pressure shadowed every decision. In a city where image defines worth, Layla couldn't simply walk away. Her anger wasn't only at her husband's betrayal. It was at the humiliation of becoming gossip, of losing status in a society that forgives men and condemns women. For Angela, the same city offered opportunity yet stripped her of power. Her love crossed an invisible line she could never come back from. In the end, the story is less about villains and victims, and more about the fragile line between devotion and destruction. Every message, every secret meeting, every lie pulled them closer to the inevitable. No one wins when love turns to obsession, when pride replaces forgiveness, and silence becomes the loudest scream. Dubai's skyline shimmered under the night sky, towers of glass and gold standing tall above the silence of loss. To the world, it was a city of perfection, but beneath the lights lay stories like this one, quiet tragedies hidden behind wealth and power. Dr. Omar al-Rashid, respected and admired, believed he could live 2 lives, one for the world, one for himself. Angela Cruz, a woman of faith and hope, mistook love for salvation in a place where love came with rules. And Layla, the elegant wife, carried her pain like armor until it shattered and took everything with it. Three people bound by secrets, destroyed by truth. One moment of rage ended a life, but the real damage began long before that night. The messages that once felt like connection became confessions. The phone that once brought warmth became a weapon. And in a city obsessed with control, emotion proved to be the one thing no one could contain. In Dubai, even the brightest lights can't hide the darkest corners of the human heart. Love, pride, betrayal, they burn quietly until one spark ignites them all. As dawn broke, the city carried on perfect, polished, and silent. But for those who knew the story, that silence would always echo. Subscribe to our channel for more true crime stories from Dubai and beyond. Real cases, raw emotions, and the dark truths hidden behind luxury.